Together with American songwriter, we had the opportunity to talk to Frank Meyer and Bruce Duff of Streetwalkin' Cheetahs, along with the return of Josie Cotton.
Adam was able to talk to the three of them on the phone. It was awesome having Josie back. If you haven't already checked out her interview, it's on our website and everywhere you listen to podcasts. She is known for Johnny Are You Queer and many other awesome 80s hits. So Flatten the Curve, it's not a band, but it's a song about the coronavirus pandemic. And it was written by Frank Meyer of the Streetwalkin' Cheetahs. And it was produced by his bandmate, Bruce Duff. And the song features 31 musicians from Josie Cotton to members of Screeching Weasel, the Runaways, the Adolescents, and many more. There's a really cool video of it on YouTube.
And after you check out that amazing video on YouTube, check out our YouTube channel at Bringing It Backwards. You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter at Bringing Back Pod.
We'd appreciate your support if you follow and subscribe to our podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts.
We're Bringing It Backwards with Frank Meyer and Bruce Duff of Streetwalkin' Cheetahs and Josie Cotton.
Hello, hello.
What's going on?
This is Frank. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Hey, Frank. How are you?
I don't know what I'm doing here.
Hi, Josie.
Hi,
I hear
Josie.
you.
Oh, hi. Hi, guys.
Hi, Josie.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm quite well. I'm a little confused. It's the first time I'm doing this on my computer, so it's a little tricky. But
Oh, the Zoom? Yeah,
you
sounds good.
oh, good.
Well, you sound fabulous.
Thank you. We try.
Josie, you're our first repeat customer.
Oh, I am?
Yeah. I love it. Thank you so much for doing this again.
Oh, yeah. No, it's great.
Oh, I sense there's an emoji representing a phone. That's probably Bruce.
Yeah, that's me. I'm on the landline because of the signal up here. It's definitely my voice won't freeze. I did a Zoom call last night, and I sounded like, the Terminator or something. It wasn't good.
Yeah, it gets all robotic when it slows down a little bit.
I like it. I think it's cool.
Yeah, it's a good effect, but I'm not going for that today.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Bruce, for joining us. Thanks, Frank and Josie. I'm excited to do this.
Yeah. Yeah, this is a big one for us. Big time.
Yeah, so our podcast is about your guys' journey in the music industry. We got Josie's story earlier a few weeks back, but would love to hear how you guys got into music, and then, of course, the Flatten the Curve song and the whole project.
Frank, take it away.
Yeah, where were you born and raised, Frank?
I was born in San Mateo County, so up north.
Bay Area?
Yeah, but my folks ended up in L.A., and I grew up in L.A., and I kind of grew up, at a time when I was a kid, it was like the early 80s, and there was just a big music scene in Los Angeles, and, as soon as I heard just the right amounts of hard rock and punk rock, I knew I wanted to play guitar. Mm-hmm. And kind of early on, I went to school with the Zappa kids, and I knew Dweezil, and he was sort of instrumental in teaching me guitar early on. And there was just a lot of musicians hanging around in the Zappa household. And so I think kind of early on, I just kind of had this sense that it was a very doable job, I mean, again, this was a different time, different era, and I was young and full of stars in my eyes. But I think that I saw a lot of these people who seemed like these big rock stars were just like, oh, but they're people over at this guy's house, and they're like real people, and some of them are nice and some of them not so nice. But it made the idea of getting into show business, I think, a lot more sort of achievable, whereas maybe a kid in Iowa or something might not have that access and might be like, well, how would I do that?
Right.
Whereas I would kind of like, well, I could ask that guy. He's in a huge band,
Yeah. That's cool. What was the first instrument you learned to play?
I gravitated to guitar really young. I loved music, and when I heard, I think it was Joan Jett was kind of the artist that made me super passionate about music as a kid. Mm-hmm. And I kind of just wanted to be Joan Jett, but I didn't really have any goal or plan. I wasn't really writing songs. I think I just wanted to be cool like Joan Jett, and I loved the sound of that music. When I heard Van Halen on the radio a few years later, and really just Eddie's guitar, that's when I was just like, what is that sound? That's what I want to do. And that's when I started playing guitar and getting a bit more passionate. And then around that time's when I met Dweezil, and he was just a little bit older than me, but like a total virtuoso and knew everyone and was cool and had a 4-track and wanted to like write songs and jam and ride bikes. And, you know, like he was just a cool kid, but he was very inspirational for me as a youngster. And again, because of the eras, couple years later, I'm in junior high school and I'm, you know, reading LA Weekly and BAM, and there's all these bands that seemed really happening and turned out to be really big bands: Jane's Addiction, Fishbone, Guns N' Roses. And those were the first bands I saw live. And of course, if your first concerts are like early unsigned Guns N' Roses and Poison and Jane's Addiction and Fishbone and Chili Peppers, all like just at the height of their awesomeness, like, of course I became a musician. You know, why would...
Wow, that's incredible. I mean, yeah, just growing up there in LA and being able to have access to
and it was a great
life.
time in music. And, you know, Josie was a, you know, big part of the new wave scene happening there. And I was always, you know, like I loved punk rock and I loved new wave and I loved kind of hard rock and heavy metal, and all of that stuff when I was just getting exposed to music was really happening in Los Angeles. It was like a big new wave scene, a big punk rock scene, and a big hair metal scene. And I just thought all of it was awesome.
And from there, did you start a band or did you start playing?
Yeah, I was a kid, and like I said, everyone, I mean, to me, it didn't seem like that much of a stretch because like my buddy was already playing music. And so yeah, with my first band, I started and I played the Troubadour when I was 14. An early version of that band had Josh Freese on drums. And
oh my God!
Weasel was playing guitar. My very first band had River Phoenix on guitar.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So my early bands, I had Donovan Leitch in one band, and River Phoenix, and then Dweezil, and this guy Chris Peters, whose mom was Leslie Ann Warren, and his dad was John Peters, the guy that they wrote Shampoo about. And so, you know, because it was like the early 80s, it was the Valley, and everyone's parents was like in show business when I was a kid. And, you know, and so that's sort of just who we hung out with. And so again, all these thoughts of like, well, I'm going to go play a gig and be famous. Like I was like, it could happen. And my brother was an actor, and you know, my brother was an actor, and he got famous really early on. So all of a sudden there was that, which is just to say again, I was like, well, hell, that guy right there who lives with me, he can do it.
Yeah. Very cool. When did you meet Josie? And did you meet her?
I met Bruce. I only met Josie fairly recently through Bruce. Bruce and I met in the 90s when my band, the Streetwalkin Cheetahs, was... Well, so essentially what happened, to answer your first question, is I started a bunch of like teenage bands, and then in college I played in bands always kind of around LA, playing around everything from grunge bands, blues bands, hard rock bands, punk rock bands. Eventually formed the Streetwalkin Cheetahs in 95. We were on Bomp Records for a few records, and... we almost got like sent over to Bruce as like punishment, which is a funny way that we met each other, in that I was dealing with one of the guys from Bomp, and he and I used to always butt heads, and we got into an argument, and I said, you know, I don't even know if we should be on this label. And he's like, I don't think you should be on this label any longer. And I was like, well, actually, technically you're supposed to do another record with you guys. What are we supposed to do about that? And he goes, I think maybe you should talk to another. Like, why don't you go talk to Bruce Duff? And I wasn't sure like what he meant by that, but I hung up the phone. I was like, actually, that's not a terrible idea. Bruce is known as, you know, being a good dude. He's a musician. He plays in the ads and played in a few bands I dug. And I thought that he meant it friendly, but I wasn't totally sure. He might have just been like, maybe Bruce Duff and his crazy ass can handle you, young man. But we went over to Triple X Records. Bruce signed us, and then Bruce and I became friends and formed a band called Sweet Justice and a band called Angus Khan. And then eventually, when the Cheetahs reunited, Bruce was the clear, logical choice to be the guitar player. And all that led us to Flatten the Curve. And Bruce at that point had a relationship with Josie, and they were making records together, so he brought her into the mix.
Very cool. Wow.
Yeah, man.
So, Bruce, how did you get into music? Where were you born and raised?
I grew up in Riverside, not to be confused with genocide or homicide, but I was already playing in bands by the time I was 13. We were playing like school dances and stuff like that, and car shows or whatever the heck you could get a gig on. And so I was playing a lot all the way through school, and then after college, I was still out in the Inland Empire. I was playing in a band called Numbers, which was essentially the Inland Empire's answer to the Tubes. We had a big show. We had projections and TV sets and smoke machines and, all kinds of lighting stuff, and 3 front people, 2 guys and a girl, and they played characters and changed costumes, and it was a whole show. And we started playing Hollywood a lot. And every label came out to see us, and they were all convinced, A, we didn't have a hit song, and B, we've already seen how much money the Tubes know how to lose. We don't need another one of these. So that sort of fizzled out, and by then I moved to Hollywood and was hustling around trying to get in a band. At the same time, I was writing for magazines a lot. I became an editor at Music Connection and was in that scene. And through that, I saw the band 45 Grave, who I just fell in love with. It was almost like I felt someone had handed me an application to fill out. What do you want to see in a band? And check. Everything I was looking for was in this one band. Mm-hmm. Their bass player left for a half a year, and during that half year, I finagled my way into the group. And that kind of launched me locally. Like their main roadie guy was a fellow named Jeff Dahl, who had a band. I ended up playing with him. During my half year in the band, we got a keyboard player named Paul Roessler, and then later he had a band called Twisted Roots, and I played with him. And Paul Roessler fits into the story hugely, as he now runs Kitten Robot Records, which is Josie's label. And I actually met Josie through working on a record for Triple X. When I was there, I was mixing a couple records with Geza X, and Geza and Josie owned a studio in Hollywood up above the Comedy Store, and I loved working there, and that's how I got to meet them. We actually got Josie on an ads record doing sort of a Valley Girl speak part, which she did in one. It's amazing. She did it in one take, and I was just like, where did that come from? We didn't tell her what to say or anything. We just, well, here's the idea. She goes, I got it. And just, wow, all right. So that was the beginning of that.
Wow. Okay. And then you guys all got together for this new project, or song at least.
Yeah, I mean, it sort of started like it was an idea that kind of just grew and grew and grew. I basically got frustrated that we couldn't even practice anymore, much less do shows or tour. Mm-hmm. And, that affected all my business work with the bands I managed. So I'm like, well, what can I do? And I got a nice little home studio here where I mix records and stuff. I go, well, I can get everybody, to work remotely. And I know a lot of people that have a setup similar to this. So if we get everybody involved, we can get tracks from everybody. But what are we going to do? So I said to Frank, kind of told him the idea. I go, let's get as many people as we can on something. But what is it? Do you got anything? And 2 days later, he had written the song "Flatten the Curve."
Well, tell me,
and it worked perfect.
I like the idea of getting all these artists together and doing this song. And I think at one point Bruce mentioned "We Are the World," but I think he meant more in terms of the idea of a bunch of people on one song. Mm-hmm. I don't think he necessarily meant to do a whole charity song. But when he said that, in my head, I was like, oh, right now they're telling us all we got to stay inside. And I had just started seeing that term "flatten the curve" kind of start to pop up a little bit. It wasn't really in the public consciousness yet, but it also seemed like a totally cool rock and roll title. And so in my head, I just thought, well, if we're going to get all these people and if we're going to do it, there should be some sort of message. And then maybe that message should just be reinforcing everyone to just like stay home and chill out and don't panic. And, and then it's not really political and something we can all kind of wrap our heads around. But this was super early in COVID and quarantine and all that stuff. So we didn't really, as Bruce has said before, like we didn't really realize it was going to have such staying power. We were like, oh, put this out in the next few weeks, and then in a month or so, when we're all out of here, it'll be a laugh.
Right. We actually felt pressure to work quickly because we thought, well, this will be over in a month. Everybody was talking about by July, everything will be back to normal. And as we've seen, that didn't come to pass.
Sure.
Normally you want your songs to have staying power. In this case, I feel like it's a mixed blessing.
Yeah, this wasn't what we were hoping for, believe me.
Yeah, when I talked to Josie, we chatted about a month ago, I think, Josie, and you were telling me a little bit about this because we were talking about Johnny and Queer, and then how I said the first time I had heard the song was the Screeching Weasel version of it. And we were talking about how, and then you said, "Oh, I got Ben Weasel on this song." And so, tell me about getting all these people together. Like, how did you narrow down the people and get the project really going?
Step one was reaching out to everybody and go, "Hey, can you even do this? Like, are you set up to do it?" Because at that time, people literally weren't leaving their houses around here. So, I mean, if you didn't have it at your home or a way to do it, then you and there were a number of people we reached out to go, great idea, but no, I don't have that kind of equipment. So that was step one, and seeing who could do it. So we sort of cast the net pretty wide with people we either worked with, played with, knew personally, or had done shows with, or worked with on labels, or I was their publicist, or who knows, just kind of things like that, both me and Frank. And I think more people said, "Oh, yeah, I can do that. Let's get it going." So, when it ended up being 31 people, I don't think we thought it would come together at that level, but it did, so we just figured out how to make it work.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking at a list of all the players on here, and it'll say guitars, and there's about 8 people or 5 keys players. Like you said, how did that arrangement happen? Did you just send them one version of the song and let everybody kind of add their piece to it?
Well, there was a master. It went like this. There was a master version of the demo that Frank made, which was pretty elaborate. It had doubled vocals, harmony vocals, at least 4 guitars, a couple of keyboards, bass, drum machine. It was a very complete arrangement. So I go, let's use this, but let's put a human drummer on it as step one, and everyone can overdub to the drummer. So we got this fellow, Steve Krivec, who's a record producer up in, I think he's around Castaic. And he has his own studio and a drum set there and everything. So he did a pretty pro version, and kind of he threw in that break beat at the end and stuff. That wasn't in the original thing. And so we sent everybody versions of that, and then Frank sent me stems of the different parts. And so if you're going to play guitar on it, here's the demo, here's the whole thing, here's the demo without guitars. So whatever it was you were going to do, we would just send them the whole completed version. So if a singer, you hear the lyrics and see how it goes, and then a version without it, so you can do it your way over it. That's how we did it. Yeah.
And then you were able to grab I'm looking here. So for example, on the keys, you have Chris Freeman and Aaron Mitten. And how did so what you had one keys part, but did you let them kind of write their own piece and they just know what key?
Yeah. Everybody kind of came up, particularly on the keyboards and the guitars. Well, actually, all the instruments, everybody sort of came up with their own lines or their own parts or whatever. So what ended up happening is the first thing that I had complete were the 3 bass players. So I was like, well, you can't have 3 basses. That's going to sound terrible. So I got to come up with one cohesive bass line that these guys play. So one guy goes into the other guy. And I worked that out and listened to it, and I go, geez, that sounds really great. So that kind of became my template of finding parts that could either coexist or right under the whole song. And then, so like Billy from Jet Boy, he sent over 6 tracks, and I was like, man, I don't know if I need all this stuff, but they were all just like little licks that dropped in answering a vocal or something like that, and they were repetitive, so they became like little figures that I could use throughout the song, and Dennis Tech did a similar thing, and so a lot of guys kind of did that, where they figure, oh, here's a little riff that we can add in, and that becomes something that's like its own little hook when it rolls by. And so I just sort of featured those things. Some people played rhythm guitar all the way through. Paul Roessler played a piano all the way through and an organ, and just pull out little pieces that I need as I need them. So a lot of it was assembling the thing, lining it up so it was in time, and then deleting parts, muting parts so that they weren't always happening. I mean, when I played the whole thing at once, it sounded like a garbage disposal going off. It was just this roar, And then once you toned it down and kind of focused on things, it sounded really good.
Wow. Yeah, that must have been pretty epic to mix that many. I mean, guitar parts from different people, but I guess if you were tracking something, there's still a lot of moving pieces to every song. But having everybody kind of playing the same thing and pasting it together, yeah, that sounds like it would be quite the process.
Yeah, and with the singers, not everybody really had a great setup. So some of the vocals were like, oh dear, how do I make that sound good? But pull it off, And some people had really great setups, and a couple people had, like Eddie Spaghetti goes, geez, I really don't know how to do this, but my son does. He's here, so, his son engineered it for him. So
that's cool. Yeah,
that was handy. There was a couple cases. I think Cherie Curry's son helped her out too. He's pretty good with the Pro Tools and stuff.
Nice. Yeah. And did you all three kind of throw your suggestions in as far as personnel to play on the song?
No, it was pretty much just me and Frank. I don't think anyone else brought anything in. Ben Weasel I had just talked to because of Josie, because they had done a duet together. So I hit him up. He was the one that was like, well, I don't really know what I'm doing, and I won't do it if it's political. And I'm like, well, it's not political. It's just about having some common sense. So he was on board, but he had a real hard. If you've seen the video, that's him at the beginning of the end of it, trying to get his equipment to work, which we thought was sort of a funny framework for the whole thing.
Yeah, and then so everybody just kind of sent you a video of themselves playing.
That was step 2. Frank can tell you more about that. Basically, he had some time, goes, let's do a video. And that happened at a time when we were already thinking, okay, this is kind of over. We're definitely, things are opening up now. But what the hell, let's make a video. And then, of course, we went in reverse. But, Frank rounded up everybody to do the video. And a whole other technical transformation.
Well, I mean, it was
tell me about that, Frank.
It was a similar project in that we had everyone send me clips of them lip syncing their part or playing their part or, whatever their element of the song was. And I, for one thing, essentially volunteered one day talking to Bruce to do it, and kind of just assumed that like half the people would flake and it would just be something way more manageable, and then I wouldn't actually get like 32 clips. And of course I got 32 clips and was soon completely overwhelmed and was like, why did I agree to do this? What was I thinking? But it came out great and it was super fun to do. But I had sent everyone sort of a spec sheet, like shoot it like this, make it in this. And of course, maybe half the people paid attention to that and the rest just gave me what they gave me. So it was like Bruce said, I was dealing with like different phone, every phone has different codecs when it does its video.
Oh yeah.
And some are MP4s and some are MOVs, and you know what I mean? There's just like, you're getting all these different formats, and I'm dumping them all into Adobe Premiere, and some of them it's not liking more than others, and I'm having to do transfers. And then again, I asked everyone, just record yourself from the top of the song even if you only sing one line, I don't care what you're doing during the parts that you're not singing or whatever, but like lining it all up, it'll be easier for me if everyone starts. No one did that.
I did that.
No, you did it. But I'm saying out of 32 people, maybe like 4 or 5, Josie included, did it. And I just said, like, if it's not your part, just dance around, have a good time, or just ignore it and just assume I'm not going to use footage of you sitting there looking bored and annoyed. And a couple people like Josie and a few did that. Most people just like started rolling 10 seconds before their section and then stopped and sent me that. So it was, again, it's all good because everyone's in the video doing their thing. But the people I leaned on were the ones like Josie, who actually gave me more content to work with, and we're just kind of having a good time and bopping around. It just gave me more stuff to cut away. But anyway, so we did it, and it all came out great. And again, the thing was to make it all cohesive, because some people were inside, some people were on webcams and in like dark rooms, some people were outside shooting on like a nice Canon 5D, and it looked beautiful. So trying to make something that didn't just like make your eyeballs bleed when you watched it with all these visuals like light, dark, grainy, perfect. Yeah, 4K, 3K, 2K. I had to kind of rein it all in, but it came out really good. And the funny thing about the Ben Weasel thing is that for the most part, there wasn't a lot of outtakes. And in that, like, people weren't like talking to the camera when it wasn't rolling or doing anything like that. And of course, I want to make all the artists look good. So it's not like if someone wasn't paying attention or they were picking their nose that I would put that in the video. And of course, I assumed people had that confidence. However, Ben's video, it had like 2 minutes of him talking at the beginning and kind of yelling at his computer, and then at the end, and like I had so much comedy material to work with. And the fact that, and I wasn't sure whether he meant to send me that or not, and I kind of just never brought it up, and I never asked Bruce because I was afraid that he might go, "Oh, that's on there? No, take all that," because it was so funny. And so I just anchored the whole video around Ben like struggling to work his computer.
That's awesome. What was your favorite part of this process, Josie?
Well, I mean, I'm the person who just came in as a singer without all the organizational skills of these two gentlemen. But I mean, I have to say, it was a little daunting to sing something with no direction at all, and pretty much asking myself how I liked what I did, and and then me responding back. You like that, Josie, about yourself? No, Josie, I don't. And so it was a kind of like therapy doing this. So the musical part, I got through that okay. I was actually terrified when the part about the video came through, because I really don't know how to film myself, and I had to create a stand out of like a broomstick and a mic stand and electrical tape, and falling down, and then it was I did it so many times, and I couldn't see, and there was no mirror, I couldn't see myself, and I just felt like I was doing mime, like for a auditorium full of people and having never done mime before. It just felt so, just so, unconnected to any kind of, aesthetic from a producer or even myself, because I'm now like the film director and the artist and the dancer and everything. So it was tricky. But I mean, the fun part, I think the most fun part for me, it all had to do with whether the song was too corny or not. Before I heard the song, I didn't know. I loved the idea. And when Bruce said, like, "We Are the World," I went, oh, no, please don't make it like "We Are the World." So and luckily it wasn't. It was just this really fun song. And it was so rock and roll. And by the time I heard it, most people were on there. And I think I was the last person to finally throw my video into the pie and everything. But I guess still can't believe how they took all of those artists and made it so cohesive. It's really pretty phenomenal and fast. It was done so quickly. That was the most amazing thing.
Yeah. How was the feeling when you got to hear the song fully finished? Like from getting the demo and singing your part to having the whole thing done and being able to hear it that way?
Well, I mean, for me, I loved the whole experience. I'm so hard on myself. I would have loved to have been able to do more, different takes of it and take it, to a better version of myself. But I was able to let that go at some point and just enjoy the whole experience of everybody all together. It was cool to have people. You just didn't. The randomness of it was very fun for me. I loved that.
Mm-hmm.
I was blown away. I think Bruce did a great job. He makes it all himself. I wasn't involved in any of that stuff, and he worked on it, so he kind of had a sense as to what it was building up into. But I had no sense. So to me, it was super cool, especially to hear people like Josie and Lisa. Like when I wrote it, it was just me multi-tracking myself and with my own male voice, and I have I can sing lots of different parts, but to hear a bunch of really awesome singers and then to hear a bunch of female singers on it and everyone's doing harmonies, like it all was just so beyond where my brain was thinking originally with the song. So it was really cool.
And what a cool way to like get everybody together too. I mean, you have all these musicians that are all in the same situation, coming together to put out the song, and then it's going to support a charity, right? Some of the funds. You want to tell me about that?
Basically, it's two charities. So we set it up through distribution so that when money comes in for the record itself, that goes to a foundation called Jubilee Jump, which my wife works with, and let's wish her a happy birthday today, which it is.
Happy
I just
birthday,
came from a little
birthday.
mini porch birthday party. Anyways, her foundation, they collect, they fund this jump rope class, which benefits inner city kids here in LA, and it's kind of taken off in a little different direction now because jumping rope is something you can do by yourself, and it requires physical distance. So, it's the perfect thing for right now. And they have like a mentor program, and they teach kids about nutrition and stuff like that, and just try to get people that want to. It's sort of like kids that want to be involved in sports, but they weren't really those kind of kids that tend to get involved, and now they are. And so it kind of gets them involved in the community a little bit more, gets them a little more social, gets them a little more active, and learning about, how to eat right and all that kind of good stuff.
Yeah,
and then the songwriting portion of it goes to our friends over at Sweet Relief, which is, as I'm sure you know, a charity that helps musicians down on their luck when health insurance runs out or any number of things that could be happening right now, such as lost revenue and what have you. You can go to Sweet Relief and hopefully get some relief. That's
Sure.
the idea,
Yeah.
Anyway.
Mm-hmm. Well, very cool. I love the song. I love the concept, and it's really cool to see how it all kind of came together with all you guys. And I appreciate you talking to me today.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I have one more question. I want to see. I've gotten an answer from Josie before, but maybe I can get another one. I want to know if you have advice for aspiring artists.
Are you asking me?
All three of you. I know you've answered the question before.
Yeah,
but
I have answered it. Yeah.
Well, I would just say, since I manage bands and see kind of what stuff comes up, I would say two things. One, and it's something I learned how to do real early on, and I just forced myself to do it, is learn how to read a contract. I remember when I was in 45 Grave, we got a pretty big contract from Enigma, which was a new label. Fortunately, we were the owner of the label's favorite band, so he was pretty, open to our ideas. But we looked at it and we're like, geez, we can't afford a lawyer. What do we do? So we went out and got a 6-pack of beer, a pack of cigarettes, went back to the guitar player's house and just mowed through this thing until we understood it and wrote down what it all meant and what we didn't like and what we did like and took it to the guy and negotiated it. That anybody can do that. They write contracts to confuse you and use language that looks complicated. But if you just take a breath, read it slowly, you'll start to understand it. And I think that's something everybody who's in publishing or playing in a band or looking for a deal or even signing a show contract, whatever it is, don't just sign it. Learn how to read it and understand what it means. And secondly, if you can get something to record yourself at home, next time we're in a pandemic, we'll give you a howl.
I would say that I would add to that, and that's certainly good advice. The other aspect of that is I would say anyone that's writing songs, you should make sure that you have your publishing straight, because a lot of musicians I know just don't even understand publishing and how it breaks down and what the difference between ASCAP and BMI is, and how royalties work and how you get paid and who you get paid from, and the fact that like every time you move and every time you change your phone number, you need to update these people because they don't know how to pay you if you disappear. And so just lots of musicians I know kind of will be like, guys with like who've sold records will be like, yeah, I never get anything. I'm like, when was the last time you told your publisher where you live, what your like, do they even know to send you a check? Well, no, shouldn't they? No, they shouldn't do anything. It's on you, man. You want to get paid, leave a paper trail, So I always just tell people, like, get with BMI or ASCAP, learn about what it is you're doing. It doesn't cost a lot of money. Manage that stuff. Register your songs. If you feel like it's warranted, start your own publishing company. You don't need to do that, but if you feel like you need to, do it. Do whatever. But it's the only way besides live shows that musicians really make any money. If you license songs and stuff to TV and commercials, you will get paid on that stuff if you have your act together.
It's something you can own forever.
Yeah, it's in my career, Bruce and I have played just together, probably upward of 1,000 gigs together between various bands. And, you make money here and there doing it. And it's nice to walk away with a couple $100 on a good night here in Los Angeles. And that's being very generous in your pocket. But if you write a song and it gets in a commercial, or let's say it gets in like an episode of a TV show, you'll forever, and then your kids will get paid on that. Might not be a lot, but it's something. And if you're entitled to it, you should be getting paid. And a lot of times, what happens is musicians do this, write these songs, record them, and then they do end up sometimes ending up in places where there's revenue generated, but they don't even know how to collect it. Or they've been sloppy about it and the money's just sitting there and they're not bothering to collect it. You know what I mean? So
yeah. Wow.
It's a drag because
all the time.
It happens all the time. And like I've talked to, I don't want to name any names, but like major artists, like guys who've been on like multiple platinum records, like guys where you'd be like, what? You're kidding me. And like they're just kind of oblivious to like the whole publishing side, and I'm like, dude, that's the only way you make money. You can't be oblivious to that side.
Right. Wow. Well, that's great advice. Thank you guys so much. Josie, I've already got your advice, but if you want to chime in, you're feel free.
I want to hear Josie's advice.
Yes, me too.
I can't even remember what I said. I probably changed my mind about it. I would say having a really mean lawyer is a really good rule of thumb. Someone that nobody likes. And I think that was my big mistake. I chose a lawyer I liked. So that was my downfall.
It's okay if you like them.
Nobody else can,
true.
though.
That is true. The record company cannot like them.
Right.
Got it.
Yeah.